Welcome in to the Barnes on Bama podcast. I'm your host, Owen Barnes, and we've got a lot to discuss. First, I want to start by saying, obviously, we're going to cover the Missouri game in this episode, preview and break down that. But we do have some basketball news that I want to cover at the top before we get into the Missouri news. So let's take care of that first, and then we'll hop right into the football news. So, as it pertains to Alabama basketball news, few things have happened since we last discussed. A couple of things that I actually forgot to mention or that have happened immediately following that charity exhibition. First thing, obviously the charity exhibition against Wake Forest was for a charity, right? The charity that they were doing to benefit was Alabama Children's Hospital, and the team did go visit Children's Hospital. There were some videos and photos that came out. I'll post some of those here, where the team did go visit Children's Hospital. They, visited with the kids, signed some autographs, just brightened some people's days. It was really, really cool to see that. Obviously, really good when the team can kind of give back to the community, especially when they've played a game to raise money for a good cause such as this, right? Another thing I forgot to mention about that charity exhibition is Davin Cosby was in the house. Davin Cosby, for those of you that are unaware, was on last season's team. He had a pretty big game against Ole Miss and played some sparingly until he broke his foot and then was out for kind of the remainder of the season. But Davin Cosby ended up transferring this offseason and transferred to Wake Forest. And so during this charity exhibition at the very beginning, they had a little bit of a ceremony where he got his Final Four ring, as well as, was able to get some pictures with Nate Oates, hug some of his teammates. Everybody was able to congratulate him and wish him well on the season that is to come. As it pertains to the next exhibition, this is going to be the charity exhibition in Huntsville against Memphis. I want to just issue a quick correction. And if y'all saw in the comments of the video where I discussed it, I accidentally misspoke and said that was going to be happening on Saturday the 28th. That's going to be happening on Monday the 28th. I just completely misspoke on that. Somebody corrected me. I just wanted to make sure that I issued that correction. That charity exhibition is happening on Monday, October the 28th. Stay on the lookout for that. I will put out any additional information about that as it comes available. But that is the next thing that we have to look forward to as it pertains to basketball, seeing the team play. I know I've talked a little bit about the J&J Apparel Tide Thursdays. There's another one of those coming up this week for homecoming, and that is LeBaron Philon. So if you are interested and want to have a chance to meet LeBaron, have him sign an autograph, get a picture, that is going to be happening this Thursday, 5:30 to 7 at J&J Apparel. For those of you unaware, it is 20% off basketball merch during the event. So if you are interested in getting any basketball merch or meeting LeBaron Philon, he's going to be having at J&J this Thursday till 7 o'clock. One of the commits for basketball that we've talked about over the past couple of weeks was Amari Allen. He committed, I believe, on November the 10th or so. He visited back at the end of August, but he is actually going to be on campus this week for homecoming. So if you do see him around, I would, give him a shout, congratulate him for joining the Crimson Tide and knowing that he's going to be on the team coming up in the future. The next thing's a little weird, right? So as it pertains to the Players Era Tournament, we've talked a lot about it over the offseason because when we talk about the non-conference schedule and the difficulty of Nate Oates' non-conference schedule, part of it shifts around the fact that we're playing in this Players Era Tournament that's the NIL tournament happening in Las Vegas. Originally, we thought that the 3 games were going to be set because that's how the format originally was set up, was that Alabama was going to play Houston, then Rutgers, and then Notre Dame. That has since changed. So Alabama will be playing Houston Game 1 and Rutgers Game 2. However, Game 3 is going to be, depending upon where Alabama is seeded on their side of the tournament, they will be playing the seed corresponding from the other side of the bracket. The reason why this is so confusing to me is a couple of reasons. One, it's not set up like a true bracket where it's winners play each other. So there is a possibility where Alabama could win both games. And so, for example, so could Notre Dame, right? Because Alabama doesn't play Notre Dame. So in theory, we could both be 2-0 heading into the next. And so I just don't understand what the tiebreakers are going to be. It's just going to be a little bit weird from that standpoint. But the other reason it's going to be super weird is on the other side of the bracket, there's Texas A&M and Creighton. Creighton, Alabama already has a game scheduled with this season. So if they play them already in the tournament, that's going to be a little awkward just because they do have their return trip to Coleman Coliseum that's going to be happening this season. And then the Texas A&M one is just completely impossible because for those of you unaware, these MTE tournaments that happen over Thanksgiving, part of the stipulations of that is you cannot play somebody from your conference. It's the reason why most of these tournaments end up only having one team from each conference. However, the way this tournament was originally set up, obviously it was super easy to have one from, two from the same conference because we were never had a possibility of playing each other. So I'm a little confused how this is fully going to work out. For example, what happens if Alabama and A&M are both technically the 1 seed? How would we be able to play each other? To go after the $1 million in NIL prize fund that's for the winner of this tournament. It just seems a little confusing to me. I don't think this was fully thought through, and that's really, really confusing given the fact that this tournament is supposed to be happening over Thanksgiving. But for those of you, on the lookout for that, that is what we know to be happening as it relates to the Players Era tournament. I will post the bracket that they've posted online. As I said, there's definitely some flaws in the bracket from what I can tell, but this is what they put out, and so this is obviously what I have to work with. And then the final thing that I wanted to talk about was Alabama has 7 guys in the NBA currently, on NBA rosters, and those 7 guys are Keon Ellis, Herb Jones, Noah Clowney, Colin Sexton, J.D. Davison, Brandon Miller. But our new addition is Alex Reese, and I wanted to shout him out because for those of you unaware, Alex Reese was a senior on Nate Oates' original team back in 2019, and Alex, had stayed. Obviously, he was recruited back in Avery Johnson time. He's from Pelham, Alabama. Was a 4-star kid, and then played on Nate Oates' original SEC championship team with Herb Jones. And then immediately following that, he quit basketball and was a bartender, and then actually went overseas and played overseas for a little while and has kind of worked his way now back to the NBA. And just want to give a shout out to Alex Reese because, props to him for being able to kind of achieve his goal, go the long way, get back to where he wanted to be in the NBA. And it's just really, really cool for him. I'll post a video here that I have from that SEC championship, him running through the confetti. I was able to share the video with Alex, and one of my friends had some videos of Herb and Alex. We had really good seats for that game. And he was able to kind of, we were able to chat with him and get some of those over to him. So it was just really, really cool. Really cool to see him, kind of live out his dream and get to the NBA, which obviously is the goal for the majority of these players. So that's what we've got as it relates to Alabama basketball. So that's really all I wanted to cover on that front. So let's shift over to Alabama football. And as you may have heard me mention in the basketball news, the Alabama football team, this is homecoming. So for those of you that may have heard me say something about homecoming for the South Carolina game, that was completely my mistake. One of my friends had his family coming into town, and I was under a misimpression that was homecoming based on some things that I had heard, but it was just Parents Weekend. This coming week for Missouri is homecoming, so the homecoming parade will be happening, of course, so plan accordingly. This game is at 2:30, so again, plan accordingly for this. Alabama's taking on Missouri, and they have got to right the ship, right? Obviously, a lot has been said about what Alabama has done poorly and what Alabama needs to fix coming into this game. I think it starts with the offense, but really the only solid game of the defense that we've seen over the past little bit was like the last game, right? Alabama's defense looked better in this last game, but part of that had to do with the fact that Nico missed some deep shots, right? I think our opinion of the defense and how they played in this last game may have been a little different had Nico hit some deep shots. Another thing to mention as it pertains to the defense, and something that we will have to see how it fully shapes out, is Alabama's going to be without one of their main starters on defense, Keon Sabb. He broke his foot from what I have heard and played on a partially fractured / broken foot in that Tennessee game, which makes the chase down deflection that he had in that game, even more impressive. But it sounds like he's going to be out for a little bit, and Bray Hubbard is probably going to be replacing him on the back end. So that's just something to kind of be on the lookout for. Obviously, this secondary was already very young. Sab was one of the guys that we had brought in, obviously from Michigan, and had played a key role in this on this team so far. He had a couple of interceptions earlier in the season. And, he's definitely been a stalwart back there in the defense. So there are going to be, without him for the foreseeable future. It doesn't sound like it's going to be the entire season, but it does sound like at least for a while he's going to be out. So just something to be on the lookout for. He is out for a while. A stat that I wanted to bring up and that Josh Pate had brought up, and it's something that definitely concerns me coming into this game, is Alabama's offense has had 53 third down attempts this season. 33 of those have been 3rd and 7 plus. That's not good. To put it lightly, that's really not a good thing. Obviously, a lot of that has to do with Alabama's inability to have positive yardage in 1st and 2nd down, as well as the penalty yardage, right? The penalty yardage, when you have a penalty on 1st down and it's 1st and 20 or 1st and 15, that definitely causes problems. Then you're going to get into longer yardage situations on 3rd down. We've converted just 5 of those 33 opportunities, right? So this is a situation where Alabama has been much more successful, obviously, when they've been under 3rd and 7, but when it's 7 plus and we've gotten behind the chains, Alabama has not done a good job of converting. And the reason why Josh Pate points this out is Missouri has a top 10 third down defense. So Missouri is obviously elite at getting people into the positions where they have problems converting, right? A lot of your third down defense has to do with how good you do on 1st and 2nd down, because the better you are on 1st and 2nd down, the more difficult it is for 3rd down to convert, right? The other thing that Pate pointed out was that Alabama's running backs have not combined for 70 yards rushing in any SEC game this season. I think a lot of that is a combination to do with the blocking, as well as the fact that we're running the read option and Jalen's pulling it at times. The fact that we have been behind the chains, and honestly against Vandy and some other teams, we've been behind in the game to a point where we didn't feel comfortable running the ball and we were just passing a lot more. But this is something that's going to have to change, right? We cannot be a team that just throws the ball 50 times. That's not how Alabama was built. That's not how Alabama is intended to be run. And it doesn't really make sense for that to be the case. Jalen throws the ball 45 times in that Tennessee game, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that we just couldn't run the ball. But when you saw in the second half, there were moments where Alabama ran the ball successfully. Alabama broke out some decent runs. Justice Haynes ends up scoring. There were some moments in that game where the blocking was okay. But Alabama just has had to go away from it so quickly this season that it's something that absolutely has to change. And they've talked about it, what's potentially been issues with it and why that potentially has been the problem. But it just simply put has to be better, right? There's no other way to talk about it other than it has to be better. And then, Pate goes back to say Alabama's won their last 5 matchups versus Missouri all by 13 plus. I don't put any stock into that because at the end of the day, when you're talking about those stats were Saban, and this is not Saban, right? No matter, again, when we talked about DeBoer replacing Saban, the thing that was very clear is even if I can tell you that DeBoer is for sure a top 5 coach in the country, right? Guaranteed a top 5 coach in the country, he's still not Saban, right? No matter who you replaced DeBoer with, even if you replaced him with Kirby, right? Still not Saban, right? So no matter what, this was going to be a different scheme, a different style, a different coach. And so all of the stats that were associated with Saban and all of the preconceived notions that were associated with Coach Saban needed to go away, right? We've talked about their differences. We've talked about how they coach, the different styles, and simply put, they needed to, you need to know that this is not Saban. This is Coach DeBoer. And so, like I said, I don't put any stock into the won the last 5 matchups all by 13 plus, because I could also be like Alabama the last time they lost to Vandy was back in the 70s. But they did, right? So at the end of the day, this team has to prove what they're worth based on their play on the field, right? I'm not giving them any passes on like, oh, you should beat this team because you have in the past, because this is DeBoer's first time playing Missouri, right? This is his first time playing them. So let's see what happens, right? Now, all that being negative, there are some positives to think about when you come into this game. One of the big positives in this game is the defensive coordinator from Missouri. His name is Batoon, Corey Batoon. And Corey Batoon, for those of you unaware, served as the defensive coordinator for Kane Womack while he was at South Alabama, right? So to say they have a familiarity is an understatement, right? He coached under Kane Womack for the past couple of seasons. And with Kane Womack being a defensive coordinator himself, this is somebody that obviously is going to run at least some version of a similar style to Kane. There's going to be some things that some tendencies that they know about each other. And obviously this is something that should be able to help Alabama's offense know how to attack each other, right? So ideally, that is something that Alabama has going for them in this game to potentially help the offense going against that defense. Is at the end of the day, they know the defensive coordinator well, at least Kane Womack does, and so he should know some of the tendencies and some of the things that he does and likes to do in certain circumstances, right? So ideally, that's something that definitely is going to play a key role in this game. The other thing that you could say about this is if Alabama can play to their potential or closer to their potential, Alabama should be able to beat Missouri at least, decently, right? If this was a normal Alabama team, I would say they should beat them handily, right? And the reason I say that is when you look at Missouri's results this season, Missouri beat up on some bad teams, and against the better teams they faced, right, the higher skill level, they either struggled against some of the lower skill level, or against the one really good team they faced this season, they got destroyed. Right? Against A&M, they lost by 31. And when I say they lost by 31, I don't mean they threw 5 picks. Brady Cook didn't have an interception in that game. Right? There was no fumbles in that game. It wasn't a time of possession thing. They just got flat out beat by A&M. Right? And under a normal circumstance, Alabama should be able to do what A&M did to them, right? Let's see if Alabama's back to normal, right? If Alabama can right the ship and Alabama can play at the level that they're capable of, there's nothing that tells me that Alabama can't win this game 31-13. But the way Alabama's played here recently, there's nothing that says we can't lose this game 28-24. Right? Either one of those are completely possible based on how this team has played here recently. So I just have to see it on the field, right? I have to see how is the offensive line blocking for Jalen Milroe. How does Milroe look in the pocket? Is he setting his feet? Is he throwing with confidence? Or is he scared to death? Right? There were comments made about, is Jalen Milroe injured? And Tyler Booker said he was 100%, and then comes back and says, well, nobody's 100%, but I have no opinion that he's injured at a level that would cause us problems. Kalen DeBoer said something similar. The problem with that statement is if you watch Jalen Milroe warm up last game, he definitely was favoring one of his legs. He's wearing a leg sleeve on his leg. And when you watch him in the pocket, he seemed scared to death. There were moments in the game against Tennessee where he was completely unsure of what he needed to do with the football, and his feet were just jittering and not set at all, right? There were also moments that you noticed that under a normal circumstance, we would expect Jalen to take off, right? There were moments where it definitely felt like he could have taken off and run with the football, and he just didn't, right? So that leads me to believe there's some lower leg or lower body injury to Jalen that is limiting his capacity in some way, shape, or form. Now, to what level? I don't know. But it definitely feels like that, right? And so for me, the question is it limiting him in this game, right? Are his feet set? Is he throwing with velocity? Is he making the right read? Is he standing back there and just shuffling his feet a lot? Does he feel set in the pocket, right? A lot of that is going to have to do with how Missouri's defense comes at him. But then some of that obviously is how does he just react as a quarterback, right? In my opinion, these things are crucially important. The other thing for me is, are we actually spreading the ball out? This Alabama offense has been the most lethal when they spread the ball out to all of their pass catchers, right? When Alabama's only throwing the ball at Ryan Williams, the opposing defense can put their best player and potentially scheme around how to stop Ryan Williams, right? In the Georgia game, again, we talk about it. The Georgia game, Alabama spread the ball out to 10 pass catchers. Ryan Williams only catches 6 passes. Yes, they're some of the most important passes in that game, but he caught 6 passes in that game. However, you look at the Tennessee game, he has 18 targets, 20 targets. This is a situation where Tennessee just knew, hey, Alabama's going to Ryan Williams. Goal line fade, we're throwing it to the 6-foot guy. Right? Whatever the notion, right? Now, the argument could be made that a couple of those should have been holding. Ryan Williams probably should catch one of those for a touchdown if he's not held, right? I completely agree with these statements. But simply put, you threw it at him 20 times. That's not when your offense has been successful. Your offense has been more successful when you're getting your tight ends in the game, when you're getting your other receivers in the game, when you're throwing to your running backs, right? When everyone's involved in the pass game, that's when Alabama's been the most successful. So do we get back to that, right? Do we get back to truly spreading the ball back around, where if we're having a blitzer, we're throwing it to the tight end down low because that's what's available? Are we giving to the check down to the running back? Are we hitting Kobe Prentice and Kendrick Law, and are we actually throwing it to all the different receivers? That becomes the question in my mind, right? The question completely becomes, is Milroe actually distributing the football, or is he just throwing it to one guy? Because just throwing it to one guy is not what got you here, right? That's what's caused you to lose a couple of games. And so I really want to see how that changes, right? As it pertains to stopping the Missouri offense, right, if we're shifting over to the defensive side, I think you have to get pressure on Brady Cook, right? I think you have to get pressure on Brady Cook, and I think that that's something that A&M did well in that game. If I pull up the stats from that A&M game, A&M is able to, let me make sure I get this right. A&M was able to get 6 sacks in that game. And they were able to also just have a ton of pressure on Brady Cook throughout that game, and he was not successful. Again, I said he didn't throw any interceptions in that game, but he did go 13 for 31, right? Was one of his worst offensive quarterback output ratings of the entire season. And they just made him uncomfortable back there in the pocket. They were able to keep pressure on him and have him completely uncomfortable throwing the football, and that's what Missouri likes to do best. Obviously, they will run the ball, but typically, Missouri is not a team that is going to lean solely on the run. They are a pass-first team, right? This is a team that has Luther Burden, has Theo Weiss, and is looking to throw the football, right? Luther Burden, coming into the season, was considered one of the best receivers in the entire country after winning the Blitnikoff last season. Him and Tedera McMillan from Arizona were kind of considered the 1-2 for the receivers. That's kind of since been overshadowed by Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams. But Luther Burden is still an absolutely elite receiver. I'm assuming Damani Jackson is going to get the call to play against Luther Burden in this game, as long as Damani is healthy. And it's going to be a tough matchup, right? That's going to be a matchup you're going to want to watch out for, and you're going to want to see that, my opinion, is because Keon Sabb is out, they're going to test the safeties, right? They're going to test Bray Hubbard. They're going to test, Alabama's definitely had some injury issues. Based on what Kalen DeBoer said, the only one who he suspects is going to be out is Keon Sabb. So that would imply that Devontae Smith and some of the others that have been, nursing injuries potentially would be back for this game. And that would be huge. But at the end of the day, I would fully expect Alabama's defensive backs to be tested in this game, right? Alabama's coverage is going to be tested in this game. Alabama's defensive backs are going to be tested in this game. And I truly think that this may come down to, can Brady Cook hit his deep shots? Because my gut says he may have some, right? We saw it in the South Florida game and in the Tennessee game where deep shots were able to be had and they just missed them, right? They just missed the deep shots and were not able to connect. I think that if Brady Cook hits his deep shots, Missouri can win this game, right? I think that Alabama's defense is susceptible to giving those up, especially without Keon Sabb. There's nothing about this team that feels locked down on the back end to make me think that they wouldn't give them up. I'm not saying they will, right? But I am saying that if a quarterback is hitting their deep shots against this team, based on what I've seen throughout the season, I fully expect them to be completed and it to be a long day for Alabama's defense, right? When they're keeping everything in front of them, they're doing okay. But when the deep shots are able to be had, it definitely is a problem, right? We saw that Nico ends up hitting one, and it basically costs us the game. If he had hit a couple of more, it would have never been a game, right? But again, we saw that against South Florida with Byron Brown. Byron Brown missed some deep shots that definitely were there to be had, right? So that's the one thing that I say you need to watch out for in this game is how is Alabama's coverage looking, right? Is this something where the deep ball is there and they're just being overthrown or underthrown? Or is this a situation where Alabama, knows that they have some younger guys in the back end and knows that they potentially, have some receivers that could take advantage, and so they are having some more help in the back end where Missouri may be able to run the ball a little better, right? And we're putting a little more emphasis on our defensive line and linebackers to be able to stop the run, right? For me, that's the question in this one is I think that our defensive backs are going to need as much help as they can get. I don't think that Missouri is an elite team, but I do think that they're a very good team, especially when they're clicking on all cylinders. We did not see that against Auburn. We definitely saw that Missouri, they had some issues. They had an issue where Brady Cook goes down with injury, but, as tough as he is, he ends up telling Drinkowitz, hey, I've only got 2.5 games left at home, and I'm not spending this one in the hospital, right? This is a tough kid. This is a kid that was trying to play for his team, and he, comes back in and wins them the game, right? I'm not calling him a super elite quarterback. I'm not saying he's going to make every throw on the field, but he's definitely capable of making some throws. And if he makes them, I'm concerned, right? There's nothing about this Alabama defense that tells me that they are going to be completely locked down as it relates to this. And I think that we're going to need really big games out of Damani Jackson, out of Jalen Mbakwe, out of all of your defensive backs, right? Out of Devontae Smith, out of Bray Hubbard, out of Malachi. You're going to need it out of all of these guys because at the end of the day, Missouri is going to throw the ball. That's who they are. That's who they like to be. And they have very good receivers. And if Alabama does not get pressure on Brady Cook and force him to get rid of the ball quicker than he's ready for, I think that it potentially could be a very long day. So that's what I would say as it relates to what to watch out for. On the offensive side of the ball, right? Like, obviously, how are we spreading out the ball? How does Jalen look in the pocket? Does he have time? Is he running at all? Is he in command of the offense? And then on the defensive side of the ball, simply put, are we getting to the quarterback quickly, right? Are we getting to the quarterback without having to blitz? How does Damani Jackson look against Luther Burton, right? Are we able to put some guys out on islands, or are we having to, scheme up to be able to kind of, can't have somebody on an island because he's going to get toasted, right? That's the question that for me in this game. And the big overarching one is, can we clean up the penalties, right? Obviously, this one's at home, not in Neyland Stadium, but you can't have 15 penalties. If you're going to win a game, you can't have 15 penalties, right? So those are the things to watch out for. This is one that's hard for me to predict. And as I said, I can look at this game going one of two ways. I can look at this game going that Alabama figures something out on offense, maybe because they're playing a defense that their coordinator knows well or whatever. But I could see that Alabama figures some things out and Alabama wins this game, something like 31, 35, 13. I could see it. I could also see this being a, call it, 31-21 loss in Bryant-Denny because Missouri just makes plays over the top and Jalen Milroe still doesn't look confident back there. And we still have some of the issues that, we were hoping were cleaned up and they're just not, right? The defense had a really good game against Tennessee. Part of that, like I said, I think part of that may have had to do with the fact that Nico overthrew some balls. Obviously, part of that has to do with how the defense played in general. But, I could also see this be a circumstance where Alabama lets the ball get over the top of them and we lose this game, right? I think either one of these are real possibilities. And the problem is, until I see what Alabama team comes out of that tunnel, I don't know which one I'm confident in. I'm going to be a homer, and I'm going to put my faith in Kalen DeBoer that we're going to figure out something on offense, and whatever has phased Jalen, they're going to have something of a fix. And I'm going to hope that it's the 35-13. Right? I'm going to hope that that is what is a possibility and that they figure 35-20, 35-13, that's the kind of thing that Alabama comes out, they figure out what they need to do on offense. The defense still plays, a very hard, tough-nosed brand of football. Maybe we get a takeaway and, Alabama's able to win this game. That's the faith I'm going to put. But I'll say I'm not confident in it, right? If you give me the first 3 series of this game, I'll tell you what the end of the game is going to be. But going into this game, I don't know that I'm super confident in what's going to happen. So that's what I have to say. That's my prediction. Like I said, I'm going to put my faith in Kalen DeBoer for this one, and we will see what happens. So that's what I have to say about the Alabama-Missouri game. If you are interested in all the content, basketball or football, please subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Peace.